So, there's been a lot of talk lately, most of it from the CAQ. Over the weekend, Christine Frechette, Bernard Dranville, of course, sparring again, a second debate. One of them will end up, of course, becoming premier and leading the CAQ. So familiar names because they've been in government now for a while. But one name that used to be in government, at least liberally with the government, was André Pratte, who since became an analyst but has now decided, veteran journalist, former, of course, publisher of La Presse, who's decided to once again rejoin, if I can use those words, the Provincial Liberal Party in a capacity where I guess we could describe this, Mr. Pratte, as the head of their think tank. So first of all, welcome back. It's good to have you here. And I would ask, what made you decide to get back and get involved again?
Thanks, Aaron. Well, when I left the chair of the policy commission of the party, it was mainly for professional reasons that are not really important today. And I've since then become free to be involved in politics again. And since Martin Coiteux left the chair of the policy commission, the chair was open again, and I decided that I should get involved because, frankly, the next election, October 5th, 2026, will be a crucial election for Quebec and for Canada. And I just believe that everyone who believes in Quebec's place in Canada should try to play a role. And I have a bit of time on my side, so I've decided to get involved again.
So this is a pretty senior role. Explain what it means, though, in your capacity. What are you going to be doing, and who will you be doing it with?
Yeah, well, right now the party, of course, is very much involved in getting a good slate of candidates for the next election. But another very important issue is to build a platform for the next election. And the party's policy committee is very much involved in designing and writing this platform with people, of course, around the leader, Charles Mignard. So that's what we're going to be doing in the next few months. The work has started many months ago. But building a platform that addresses Quebecers' real concrete problems is a long and difficult task because it has to be a serious platform. It has to be costed. Choices have to be made, especially with the province's financial situation. So that's what we're going to be doing for the next few weeks and months.
So I would ask you what some of those choices are going to have to be and some of those issues. And we talk a lot about the fact that, and I think it's no secret, obviously, we hear that from people all the time, cost of living is going up. With respect to announcing a platform, I think perhaps unfairly to some degree, when Charles Mignard took over, a lot of people wondered, why is he not talking about specific ideas that he has or platforms that this party will have? When is that going to change, or is that going to change, or do we have to wait till right before the campaign begins for that to happen?
No, well, I think it's changing because the leader did announce 5 crucial priorities, including the housing shortage and the cost of living and education and healthcare. So, and he has announced some policies, but of course we're not going to divulge all our platform right now. We still have work to do on some of those issues, but of course the main challenge is due to the province's very difficult financial situation. So, for instance, we want to help Quebecers face the high cost of living, but to do that obviously requires money, and the money the provincial government doesn't have a lot of. So that's why we have difficult choices to make. Where will the little money that there is available, where will a Liberal government invest that money?
It's funny when I hear you say that. I remember doing an interview with Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon not that long ago, talking about the future of Quebec as he sees it, suggesting that, if and when separation were to happen, Quebec would be a rich, and use the word country. Where does that come from, and what is as far as you're concerned, what does that even mean?
Well, I've looked very closely at their financial projections, the Parti Québécois, with a group of economists, and we found many lacks and errors in their calculations. But basically, what Mr. Saint-Pierre Plamondon does is he eliminates every dime that is spent by the federal government and says, well, this money will come automatically to an independent Quebec. And of course, that's not how things will work. I mean, for instance, he seriously underestimates the cost of having an army and defense and equipment for our military by billions of dollars. And if you add that up, you come up with a province or a country, a new country, that would be in financial dire straits. So I think, the Parti Québécois may dream in color, but I think Quebecers really are concerned about things that are, close to their situation, the lack of housing and the cost of living. Buying food is extremely costly. That's what preoccupies Quebecers much more than, how many embassies we would have if we were an independent country.
Yeah, as we say, kitchen table issues, they're clearly the ones that concern people here the most. I would go back, if you could remember. So we go back to when Philippe Couillard was still the premier, and a lot of people thought, that would be the case. And then, of course, there was the use of the word austerity, which bothered too many people who didn't understand what it meant. If you fix what happened then, 8 years later, now that the CAQ has been in power, what would they be? What would be the first thing you would fix for the Liberal Party?
Well, I think we have to find a balance. Obviously, eventually we'll have to balance the books, but the situation today is different than the one from 8 years ago. We would have to be very careful in how to do that while helping Quebecers,
right,
and repairing these, public services like healthcare and education. That will require some money. So I think we have to be careful. What Quebecers expect, I think, is that the province's budget is managed carefully, rigorously, which does not mean going back to zero deficit in 1 year or two.
But it's interesting as I hear you say that. You think about, this government now, the CAQ government, the giant deficit that they ran. And yes, you can certainly factor in COVID as part of that. But that was now 4 years ago, still running a pretty giant deficit, and had the biggest in Quebec's history. I think back, I use that word austerity again. Obviously, you learn from your mistakes in politics. It was doing the right thing, but apparently doing it the wrong way, which I don't know if you'd agree that would cost the Liberals that election. You learn from that mistake, yet at the same time, you look at a deficit right now, you want to bring that down. Where's that fine line as to how you do that?
Well, I think, looking at the polls and talking to many people across the province, I believe that Quebecers understand that the current situation of the government is not tenable and that something needs to be done. But they expect this to be done in a very careful, deliberate manner, but a careful manner to take into account the needs of Quebecers, of people. So that's a fine balance. It's not an easy balance to find, but my impression, talking again to many Quebecers, is that people understand that we need to find that balance, that we cannot afford to have an increasing number of bureaucrats and departments and programs because we simply don't have the means for it to pay for it. So I think people understand that, but they want the government to explain what it is doing and why it's doing it.
If I can just go back and we wrap up to what we started with, you called this upcoming election in October crucial. Crucial in what sense and why?
Well, I mean, the first reason why it's crucial is because the Parti Québécois is committing to holding a referendum on separation. And we believe not only that it's a bad idea, but it's especially bad idea in the current context, where Quebec needs to be part of Canada to better protect its economic situation and political stability. So it's the worst possible time to get into a referendum campaign. Obviously, the Parti Québécois is still ahead in the polls. That's what they're promising, and we're promising stability, prosperity, and uniting Quebecers around common goals.
Mr. Pratte, I hope we'll have a chance to speak again, and I thank you so much for the time. Very much appreciate it.
Thanks for the invitation, Aaron.
Take good care. André Pratte, veteran journalist, did some analysis for us here, by the way, on CJAD, and now back with the Provincial Liberal Party, leading their think tank heading into the next election.
I'm Luke Wilson. Join me each week for Film Never Lies. Since retiring from the NFL, I've had a lot on my mind, and now got my own show. So if you're tired of lazy takes, if you want honest conversations, join us each week. Film Never Lies, available on all TSN platforms and the iHeartRadio app.